Chapter 1. The Unseen Omega. Elliot Vale had spent his entire life perfecting the art of invisibility, metaphorically speaking. As the most elusive operative in the Enigma Troupe, a covert organization that specialized in guarding high-profile clients, Elliot was known for his precision and his ability to blend in. No one suspected his deepest secret. He wasn't the alpha he appeared to be. He was an omega, relying on suppressants to mask his true nature. After years of hiding behind his facade, Elliot thought he had perfected the art of remaining unnoticeable. That was until he met Adrian Steele, the billionaire heir to Steele Enterprises, a man as dangerous as he was alluring. Adrian was unlike any client Elliot had ever been assigned to protect. He was sharp, calculating, and radiated the kind of alpha energy that could dominate a room without a single word. From the moment Elliot stepped into Adrian's office, tension crackled in the air. "Elliot Vale," Adrian said, his deep voice sending a shiver down Elliot's spine. "I've heard of you, Enigma's best operative. They say you can disappear in plain sight. I'm here to ensure your safety, not to be seen," Elliot replied curtly, maintaining his professional composure. He avoided Adrian's piercing gaze, knowing how dangerous it was to meet an alpha's eyes for too long. Adrian smirked, leaning back in his leather chair. "Good, I don't need someone flashy. I need someone who can handle threats without making a mess. You think you can do that?" Elliot's jaw tightened. "I always do." For weeks, Elliot shadowed Adrian, carefully navigating the billionaire's world of power plays and high-stakes deals. Adrian's enemies were everywhere: rival corporations, disgruntled ex-employees, and even those within his inner circle. One evening, during a high-profile gala at Adrian's estate, an intruder attempted to breach the security perimeter. Elliot moved swiftly, intercepting the threat before it reached Adrian. The scuffle was brief but intense, leaving Elliot slightly disheveled. It was then that Adrian saw something he wasn't supposed to: a flicker of vulnerability in Elliot's carefully maintained alpha-like demeanor. The faintest hint of an omega scent reached Adrian's nose, sparking a primal reaction he couldn't control. "Wait," Adrian said, catching Elliot's arm as he tried to walk away. His grip was firm but not painful. "You're—" He didn't finish the sentence, but the look in his eyes said it all. Elliot's heart pounded. The suppressants must have weakened during the fight. He yanked his arm free and glared at Adrian. "You don't know what you're talking about." Adrian's expression darkened, his alpha instincts pushing him to press further. But something in Elliot's defiant stance stopped him. This was no ordinary omega. From that night on, Adrian couldn't stop thinking about Elliot. He told himself it was curiosity, an enigma he couldn't unravel. But deep down, he knew it was more. Elliot was different, and Adrian found himself craving the challenge of breaking through his defenses. Elliot, on the other hand, grew increasingly wary. Adrian's gaze lingered too long. His questions became too personal, and his presence too suffocating. Yet Elliot couldn't deny the pull he felt toward the alpha, no matter how much he tried to suppress it. By the time Adrian invited Elliot to a private dinner under the guise of a security briefing, the lines between professional duty and personal boundaries were already beginning to blur. Elliot sat stiffly across from Adrian, his sharp blue eyes scanning the room for potential threats. "Why am I here, Mr. Steele?" he asked, his voice clipped. Adrian leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Call me Adrian. And you're here because I want to know more about you, Elliot." "There's nothing to know," Elliot said, his tone colder than the champagne chilling on the table. Adrian's smirk returned, but there was a softness in his eyes that unnerved Elliot. "You're wrong. You're fascinating. And I don't let things I'm fascinated by slip away." Elliot clenched his fists under the table. This was dangerous territory. Adrian was crossing lines, and Elliot couldn't afford to get tangled in his web. But as he stood to leave, Adrian's voice stopped him in his tracks. "Run if you want," Adrian said quietly, "but I always get what I want, Elliot, and right now that's you." Elliot's heart raced as he exited the room, his mind screaming one thing: run away before it's too late. Chapter 2. The Obsession Begins. Elliot's mind was a whirlwind as he drove back to his apartment that night. Adrian's words haunted him. The alpha's quiet confidence, laced with a subtle threat, was like a chain tightening around his neck. "He's dangerous. Elliot muttered to himself, gripping the steering wheel. I have to stay professional. No personal entanglements. Yet, no matter how much he tried to brush off the encounter, Adrian's voice echoed in his mind. At Steel Enterprises, Adrian couldn't focus on anything but Elliot. His business partners droned on about quarterly profits, but his mind was fixated on the enigmatic operative who had challenged him in ways no one else dared. Adrian leaned back in his chair, a sly smile creeping onto his lips. An Omega with alpha energy, he mused. No wonder he's hiding. He tapped his fingers on the desk, lost in thought. Elliot intrigued him, not just because of the revelation, but because of his defiance. Most Omegas crumbled under an Alpha's gaze. Elliot had stood firm, his sharp eyes daring Adrian to make a move. It only made Adrian want him more. Over the next few days, Adrian's fixation deepened. He watched Elliot more closely during their interactions, his gaze lingering just long enough to make the Omega uncomfortable. Adrian's subtle but intentional acts of dominance, a hand resting too close, a look that burned too long, made Elliot's instincts scream to either fight or flee. Elliot wasn't one to scare easily. As a member of the Enigma troupe, he had faced life-and-death situations countless times. But Adrian was a different kind of threat. His presence wasn't violent, yet it was overpowering. It wasn't just Adrian's alpha energy that unnerved Elliot. It was the way the man saw through his defenses as if they didn't exist. Stop staring at me like that, Elliot snapped one evening when Adrian's lingering gaze became unbearable. I can't help it, Adrian replied smoothly. You're captivating, Elliot. I've never met anyone like you. I'm not here for your entertainment, Elliot shot back. Can't help it, Adrian replied smoothly. You're captivating, Elliot. I've never met anyone like you. I'm not here for your entertainment, Elliot shot back. I'm here to do a job. Keep it professional or I walk. Adrian's jaw tightened, the alpha in him bristling at Elliot's defiance. But he quickly regained his composure, a smirk playing on his lips. You won't walk. You're too loyal to leave a job unfinished. And if you did, I'd find you. Adrian's interest quickly turned to obsession. He began digging into Elliot's past, trying to uncover the secrets he was hiding. But Elliot was good at erasing his tracks. His file in the Enigma troupe was classified, and Adrian's efforts only revealed the barest hints of his history. Undeterred, Adrian began testing Elliot's limits. He orchestrated scenarios to bring them closer, late-night strategy meetings, dinners under the guise of security updates, even staging a minor breach to see how Elliot would react. Elliot saw through the games, but couldn't confront Adrian directly without risking his cover. Instead, he distanced himself as much as possible, all while preparing an escape plan. But Adrian wasn't the only one watching. Unknown to them both, someone else had taken an interest in Elliot, a rival of Adrian's who wanted to use the Omega against him. One evening, as Elliot patrolled Adrian's estate, his communicator buzzed. Unknown activity near the East Wing, came the voice of another operative. Elliot moved swiftly, his instincts on high alert. The air was thick with tension as he scanned the area. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, armed and aiming straight for him. The fight was quick and brutal, ending with Elliot pinning the intruder to the ground. But the skirmish had left him rattled, and worse, it had weakened the suppressants he relied on. Adrian arrived moments later. Having been alerted to the breach, his alpha instincts kicked in the moment he caught the faintest trace of Elliot's true scent. Elliot froze as Adrian's gaze locked onto him, his eyes darkening with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. You're an Omega, Adrian said, his voice low and dangerous. Elliot's heart pounded. He had been exposed. Stay away from me, he warned, taking a step back. Adrian's expression softened, but his gaze remained unwavering. You can run, Elliot, he said quietly, his voice laced with determination, but you won't get far. I'll always find you. Chapter 3. The Unplanned Bonding. Elliot's instincts screamed at him to flee. Adrian's words were more than a threat. They were a promise. Yet leaving wasn't as simple as walking away. Adrian's security was airtight, his resources boundless, and his obsession was palpable. Elliot spent the next few days avoiding Adrian as much as possible, focusing entirely on his duties. But the Alpha's presence loomed over him like a storm cloud. Every encounter was charged, every glance suffused with tension. It was late one evening when the situation came to a head. Elliot was in Adrian's private study, debriefing him on the security measures after the recent breach. Adrian stood by the window, the city lights casting a soft glow over his chiseled features. "You've been distant," Adrian said, his tone calm but loaded with meaning. "I'm doing my job," Elliot replied tersely, his eyes fixed on his report. Adrian turned, his piercing gaze locking onto Elliot. "You're avoiding me." Elliot's patience snapped. "What do you want from me, Adrian?" "I'm here to protect you, not to entertain your obsession." Adrian took a step forward, his presence overwhelming. "You're not just some bodyguard, Elliot. I'm nothing to you," Elliot interrupted, his voice shaking with anger and fear. Before he could say more, Adrian closed the distance between them, his hand gripping Elliot's wrist. The contact sent a jolt through Elliot's body, his suppressed Omega instincts flaring under the Alpha's dominant energy. "Don't lie to me," Adrian growled, his voice low and dangerous. "I can feel it. You're fighting this as much as I am." Elliot tried to pull away, but Adrian's grip tightened, his other hand moving to cup Elliot's jaw. "You drive me insane, Elliot. Every second I'm near you, I can't think straight." "Tell me you don't feel the same." Elliot's resolve crumbled under the weight of Adrian's words. He hated himself for it, but he couldn't deny the pull he felt toward the Alpha. His breaths came in shallow gasps as Adrian leaned closer, their faces mere inches apart. "This is wrong," Elliot whispered, his voice trembling. Adrian's lips brushed against Elliot's, a whisper of a kiss that ignited a fire neither of them could extinguish. "Tell me to stop," Adrian murmured. But Elliot didn't. What followed was a blur of passion and heat. Elliot's carefully constructed walls crumbled, leaving him vulnerable to the Alpha he had sworn to resist. The night was both intense and tender. A collision of dominance and submission, need and desperation. For the first time in years, Elliot allowed himself to feel, to let go of the armor he had worn for so long. Adrian was relentless yet gentle, his touches filled with a strange kind of reverence that made Elliot's heart ache. By the time the dawn broke, Elliot lay awake in Adrian's arms, his mind racing. He had crossed a line he couldn't uncross. He had let Adrian in. The days that followed were a whirlwind of confusion and regret for Elliot. He threw himself into his work, avoiding Adrian whenever possible. But the Alpha's gaze never wavered, his possessive nature only growing stronger. Elliot thought he could move on, pretend the night hadn't happened. But weeks later, his body betrayed him. It started with nausea, then fatigue. Elliot brushed it off at first, attributing it to stress. But when he missed his suppressants, and his heat cycle didn't return as expected, panic set in. He did the unthinkable. He went to a discreet clinic and confirmed his worst fear. He was pregnant. Elliot's first instinct was to run. He packed his things, prepared to disappear like he always had, but before he could leave, Adrian cornered him in the estate's training room. "You've been avoiding me again," Adrian said, his tone calm but his eyes sharp. "I've been busy," Elliot lied, keeping his back to the Alpha. "Busy hiding something," Adrian countered. He stepped closer, his presence suffocating. "What are you running from this time?" Elliot froze, his heart pounding. Adrian's nose flared, his Alpha instincts picking up on the subtle changes in Elliot's scent. His eyes darkened as realization dawned. "You're pregnant," Adrian said, his voice a mixture of shock and awe. Elliot turned, his eyes blazing with defiance. "It doesn't change anything. I don't belong to you, Adrian. This doesn't mean you can control me." Adrian's jaw tightened, but his expression softened as he looked at Elliot. "You think I care about control? This is my child. Our child. I won't let you face this alone." "I don't need your help," Elliot snapped, but his voice wavered. Adrian stepped closer, his hand gently brushing against Elliot's arm. "Maybe not. But I'm staying whether you like it or not. I'll protect you both, even if you hate me for it." And for the first time, Elliot saw a different side of Adrian. The Alpha's obsession hadn't faded, but there was a tenderness now, a quiet determination to be better, for Elliot and the child. It scared Elliot more than Adrian's possessiveness ever had. because for the first time he wondered if he could let someone in without losing himself. Chapter 4. The Battle Within. Elliot wanted to believe Adrian's promise to protect him, but the Alpha's obsession was as unrelenting as ever. While Adrian softened, in some ways, his possessive nature loomed larger than life. Every glance, every word, every action screamed of a man who would burn the world to keep what he believed was his. For Elliot, it was suffocating. For Adrian, it was love in its rawest form. Adrian insisted Elliot stay at his estate. "It's safer here," he said. "You and the baby are too important to risk." Elliot wanted to argue, but knew Adrian wasn't entirely wrong. The failed attack on the estate weeks ago wasn't an isolated incident. Adrian's enemies were still out there, and now Elliot's pregnancy made him more vulnerable than ever. But living under Adrian's roof was a constant test of Elliot's patience. Adrian hovered too much, his presence always a few steps behind. "You don't need to follow me everywhere," Elliot snapped one morning as he caught Adrian lingering outside the training room. "I'm not following," Adrian said, his tone smooth but his eyes intense. "I'm ensuring you're safe." "I don't need your leash," Elliot countered, glaring. Adrian's lips twitched into a smirk, his obsession glinting in his gaze. "Not a leash, Elliot. A tether. I can't let you drift too far." As the days turned to weeks, Elliot began to notice subtle changes in Adrian. The Alpha's obsession didn't waver, but it became more refined. Adrian no longer tried to dominate every interaction, but instead sought ways to be close without pushing Elliot too far. At night, Adrian worked late in his study, but his door always remained open. In the mornings, he would leave small gestures of care, a cup of tea, a blanket draped over the couch where Elliot had fallen asleep. Yet the moments of tenderness were always shadowed by Adrian's darker tendencies. When Elliot caught him barking orders at his security team to report every movement Elliot made, the Omega exploded. "Do you think I'm some prisoner you can keep tabs on?" Elliot demanded, slamming the door to Adrian's study open. Adrian stood from his desk, his presence towering. "I think you're carrying my child. And I won't let anyone hurt either of you." "Hurt me?" Elliot scoffed. "You're the one suffocating me, Adrian. This obsession of yours. It's dangerous." Adrian's jaw clenched, his hands gripping the edge of the desk. "You think I don't know that? You think I don't feel it eating at me every second you try to push me away?" His voice cracked, raw with emotion. "You're the one thing I can't lose, Elliot. Don't ask me to stop trying to keep you." Elliot's resolve wavered. He hated how Adrian's words cut through him, stirring emotions he didn't want to face. The tension between them reached its peak one stormy night. Elliot was restless, pacing the halls of the estate as rain lashed against the windows. His thoughts were a chaotic mess of fear, anger, and something dangerously close to longing. Adrian found him in the library, standing by the fireplace with his arms crossed. "What's keeping you up?" Elliot didn't turn around. "Everything." Adrian stepped closer, his voice softer than Elliot had ever heard it. "You're scared." "I'm not scared," Elliot said, though his voice betrayed him. Adrian moved closer, his hand resting lightly on Elliot's shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone, Elliot. I'm here." The Omega tensed, his instincts battling against his logic. "You're here because you want to control me, not because you care." Adrian's grip tightened, his voice dropping into a growl. "Don't tell me how I feel. I care about you more than you'll ever understand." Elliot turned, his eyes blazing with defiance. "Then stop trying to own me." Adrian's composure snapped. "You think I'm trying to own you? I'm trying to protect you because I can't lose you." His voice broke, and for the first time, Elliot saw a vulnerability in Adrian that shook him to his core. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Adrian stepped back, his hands falling to his sides. "I can't change what I am, Elliot. I'll always want you close, but I'll try. I'll try to give you space if that's what you need." Elliot's heart ached at the rawness in Adrian's voice. He hated the Alpha's obsession, but he couldn't deny the depth of his emotions. "You're impossible, Adrian," he muttered, shaking his head. "And you're infuriating," Adrian replied, a ghost of a smirk crossing his lips. Despite the tension, the night marked a turning point. Adrian's obsession didn't fade, but he began to temper it, channeling his intensity into ensuring Elliot's safety without smothering him completely. Elliot, in turn, started to see Adrian in a new light. He was still overbearing, still too possessive, But beneath it all was a man who would do anything to keep him and their child safe. As the weeks passed, the fragile balance between them grew stronger, though both knew it wouldn't take much to tip the scales again. Chapter 5: Under Siege. The uneasy truce between Eliath and Adrian was fragile at best. Eliath continued to chafe under Adrian's obsessive protectiveness, while Adrian struggled to curb his instincts to control. But their tenuous peace was shattered when the threats from Adrian's rivals escalated. One evening, as Eliath walked the estate's perimeter for a routine check, he felt it. A shift in the air, the distinct sensation of being watched. His instincts flared. He slipped into the shadows, scanning the area with sharp eyes. Then came the unmistakable sound of movement, a figure darting across the lawn. Eliath moved swiftly, intercepting the intruder. The confrontation was quick but brutal, and Eliath managed to subdue the attacker. When Adrian arrived, summoned by the estate's alarm system, he found Eliath standing over the unconscious assailant, his hand pressed protectively against his stomach. Adrian's eyes darkened as he took in the scene. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. "I can handle myself," Eliath replied sharply, but Adrian wasn't listening. Adrian turned to his security team, barking orders. "Double the patrols. I want the estate locked down. No one gets in or out without my approval." Inside the estate, Eliath paced the living room as Adrian hovered nearby. "This is why I told you to let me handle security," Adrian said, his tone tight with anger and worry. "And this is why I don't trust you," Eliath shot back. "You're using this as another excuse to tighten your grip." Adrian's hands clenched into fists. "You are almost hurt, Eliath. You're carrying my child, and you're acting like this is some minor inconvenience." Eliath rounded on him, his eyes blazing. "I've been protecting myself long before you came along, Adrian. I don't need you to fight my battles." Adrian's expression softened, though his eyes still burned with intensity. "Maybe not, but you're not alone anymore, Eliath. Let me help." Eliath hesitated, the sincerity in Adrian's voice cutting through his defenses. He hated how the Alpha always managed to unnerve him, to make him question his own resolve. The next attack came a week later. This time it wasn't just an intruder, it was a coordinated effort. Armed men breached the estate's outer defenses and chaos erupted. Adrian's security team mobilized quickly, but the attackers were skilled. Eliath, despite Adrian's orders to stay hidden, took charge, leading a small team to neutralize the threat. As the fight raged, Eliath found himself cornered in one of the estate's hallways. His hand instinctively went to his stomach as two assailants advanced on him. Before he could act, Adrian appeared, a fury Eliath had never seen before blazing in his eyes. The Alpha moved with deadly precision, taking down the attackers with ease. When it was over, Adrian turned to Eliath, his breathing heavy. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Eliath replied, though his voice was shaky. Adrian closed the distance between them, his hands gripping Eliath's shoulders. "You could have been killed. He stopped, his voice breaking. "I can't lose you, Eliath. I can't lose either of you." Eliath stared at Adrian, taken aback by the raw vulnerability in his voice. For the first time, he saw the man behind the obsession, a man who was terrified of losing the people he cared about. That night, as they sat together in the estate's safe room, Eliath spoke softly. "Why are you like this, Adrian? Why do you care so much about someone like me?" Adrian looked at him, his gaze unwavering. "Because you're not just someone, Eliath. You're the only person who's ever made me feel alive. And now, you're giving me something I never thought I'd have, a family." Eliath's throat tightened. He wanted to dismiss Adrian's words, to tell him they didn't mean anything. But deep down, a part of him wanted to believe. "I'm not saying I forgive you for everything," Eliath said after a long pause. "But if we're going to survive this, we need to work together." Adrian nodded, his expression solemn. "Whatever it takes, Eliath. I'll do anything to protect you and our child." The aftermath of the attack left its mark, but it also brought Eliath and Adrian closer. While Adrian's obsession remained, it became clear that his feelings were rooted in something deeper than mere possession. For Eliath, the realization was unsettling, yet oddly comforting. Despite their differences, he couldn't deny that Adrian would go to any lengths to keep him safe. As they prepared for the battles ahead, Eliath found himself wondering if there was a way to coexist with the man who had upended his life, or if their story would end in destruction. Chapter 6. The Cracks in the Armor. The aftermath of the attack left both Eliath and Adrian on edge. The estate was fortified to the point of becoming a fortress, and Adrian's obsession with security intensified. For every gesture of care Adrian showed, there was an equal measure of control that grated on Eliath's nerves. But something had shifted between them. Eliath couldn't ignore the lengths Adrian went to ensure his safety, even if his methods were heavy-handed. One night, unable to sleep, Eliath wandered into the kitchen. To his surprise, he found Adrian there, leaning against the counter with a glass of whiskey in his hand. "You drink?" Eliath asked, his tone teasing. Adrian looked up, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Only when I can't sleep, which is often, thanks to you." Eliath rolled his eyes and sat across from him. "Let me guess. Because you're too busy worrying about me running away?" "Not just worrying, planning," Adrian admitted, his tone half serious. Eliath sighed, shaking his head. "You're impossible." Adrian's expression softened as he studied Eliath. "And you're infuriating, but I wouldn't change a thing about you." The words caught Eliath off guard, and for a moment he didn't know how to respond. The sincerity in Adrian's voice made his heart ache in a way he wasn't ready to confront. Over the next few weeks, their relationship began to shift. Adrian still hovered, still obsessed, but he also started listening to Eliath more, respecting his boundaries in small ways. Eliath, in turn, found himself lowering his guard around Adrian. He started to see the man behind the obsession, the one who stayed up late reading parenting books, who carefully planned meals to ensure Eliath got the nutrients he needed, who silently stood watch outside Eliath's room during restless nights. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony, Adrian placed a tentative hand on Eliath's. "I know I'm not easy to deal with," he said quietly, "but I'm trying, Eliath. For you. For us." Eliath looked at him, his defenses crumbling just a little. "I can see that," he admitted. "And maybe I'm tired of fighting you all the time." For the first time, Adrian's smile wasn't a smirk or a calculated expression. It was genuine, and it made Eliath's chest tighten. Just when things seemed to settle, another threat emerged. One of Adrian's most dangerous rivals, a rival alpha named Marcus, discovered Eliath's pregnancy. Marcus saw it as a weakness to exploit, a way to destroy Adrian's unshakable control. The first warning came in the form of a letter delivered to the estate. "You can't protect what's already broken. The Omega and the pup will be mine." Adrian's fury was unlike anything Eliath had ever seen. He doubled the security, forbade Eliath from leaving the estate, and personally oversaw every detail of the new defenses. But Eliath refused to be caged. "I won't live like a prisoner," he told Adrian. "Not for you, not for anyone." "You think this is about control?" Adrian growled. "This is about keeping you alive, Eliath." "And what kind of life is this?" Eliath shot back. The argument ended in a stalemate, with Adrian reluctantly agreeing to let Eliath accompany him on missions to confront Marcus directly. Chapter 7. The Final Showdown. The confrontation with Marcus came sooner than either of them expected. Adrian received intel about Marcus's location and decided to strike first. Despite Adrian's protests, Eliath insisted on coming along. "I'm not sitting on the sidelines while you fight my battles," Eliath said firmly. Adrian reluctantly agreed, though his protective instincts were on high alert. The operation didn't go as planned. Marcus had anticipated their move and set a trap. Eliath and Adrian found themselves cornered in an abandoned warehouse, surrounded by Marcus's men. "Look at you," Marcus sneered as he stepped into view. The mighty Adrian brought to his knees by an Omega. Adrian's growl was low and deadly. "Touch him, and you'll regret it." Marcus laughed. "Oh, I won't have to. You'll destroy yourself trying to protect him." But Eliath refused to be a pawn in Marcus's game. Using his skills, he disarmed one of Marcus's guards and created a diversion, giving Adrian the opening he needed to take control. The fight was brutal, but Adrian's rage was unmatched. When the dust settled, Marcus lay unconscious, and his men were subdued. Adrian turned to Eliath, his eyes wild with worry. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Eliath assured him, though his hands trembled from the adrenaline. Adrian pulled him into a fierce embrace, his voice shaking. "Don't ever scare me like that again." The ordeal left both of them changed. Adrian's obsession didn't fade, but it became tempered by a newfound respect for Elioth's strength and independence. Elioth, in turn, began to see Adrian's obsessive care as something more complex than simple control. It was a deeply flawed expression of love, a love that he was finally ready to accept. Months later, as they welcomed their child into the world, Elioth looked at Adrian and saw not the overbearing alpha who had turned his life upside down, but the man who had fought for him, protected him, and loved him with an intensity that defied reason. "I never thought we'd make it here," Elioth admitted as he cradled their newborn. Adrian's hand rested gently on Elioth's shoulder. "I told you, Elioth. I'd burn the world for you." Elioth smiled, a rare softness in his expression. "You don't have to. I'm staying."